Welcome to our afternoon discussion of our people, our future, the next generation. This is a subject that I hold very dear to my heart, and I'm very passionate about it. So it's a big honor for me to be the moderator for this panel and to give you some insight of some of the expertise that we have here today. In the breakbulk and project cargo market, the struggle has been a long time coming, keeping the newcomers interested and our candidates diversified and hiring managers open-minded. Today, we will be discussing 4 important topics on a prospective recent newcomers and industry with our respective newcomers and industry veterans. It is important to note that companies in our sector are required to play their part by providing career advice and work experience opportunities. And I challenge everybody that's here today to just do one act of encouragement of individuals into our industry once a month, and you'll see how not just an advantage for yourself, but for actually our industry it will make. When you look within our industry professionals, you will see that there is a large talent gap that is currently present. So definitely now is the time for us to take notes and verify what we can all do to close this gap. At the Breakbulk convention, you will notice, if you just look around at the individuals that are attending, I'm actually feel really good today because in our audience, we have a lot of nice young people. This is awesome. But if you look around the Breakbulk convention, there is a big gap between the number of, I don't want to say us more tenured participants with the new generation coming in. So it's our challenge to make sure that we keep the new talent coming in. So based on this subject, we have invited the following individuals to provide some input. Within our industry veterans, we have John Hark from Breakbulk Logistics, who is also an adjunct at Texas A&M Galveston for 18 years, along with his board participation on a number of organizations within Houston. John is bringing to us his experience with his involvement in bringing these new professionals interested into our industry. He's very, very passionate about it. He's regularly mentoring 15 plus mentees in our business. That's a lot. That takes time. It's not just saying that he does it, he actually schedules it and gets it done. So as you can see and know, he is definitely doing his part. So we're glad to have some of his input today. Rick Padilla with Agility Project Logistics is bringing his long tenure of 30 plus years in our experience in our industry to share with us his thought. Agility recently participated with 3 internship opportunities over the summer, so he's going to share some of that with us. Kylie Lung, who is a student at the University of Houston studying supply chain logistics technology. She'll be graduating in December, so if anybody needs her resume after this. This past summer, she was a part of the ECMC internship. Hear me? Seems like it's cutting off. She was part of the ECMC internship program at Agility, where she has had an opportunity to shadow agents, vice presidents, and many more. Mario Rodriguez, the last of our panel, is a junior in the Maritime Business Administration program at Texas A&M University in Galveston. He's involved in various student organizations such as the Maritime Administrators Common Reader Program and participating in the ITMA Mentor program, and also he's the treasurer for the SAMA group. So we're going to be looking at this opportunity of sharing our information within the following key categories: development, internship, mentorship, and recruitment. This question will go for Rick. How is the industry planning for succession readiness?
Well, I want to clear one thing before I get started. She did say I have 30 years in the business. I started when I was 10. So I'm not one of those old guys that she's referred to walking around. But it's been a challenge. I think we've done a pretty good job. I think from a mentorship and from a leadership standpoint, we are responsible for paying it forward to you guys. Every time I go to somewhere, I tell people about, especially young people, take the opportunity to look at global organizations. And when those global organizations have an opportunity around the world, raise your hand. And then it becomes my responsibility, or the people that are in leadership roles, to explain what that does for you. Once you put that on your resume, it's fantastic, right? So I think the challenge we have Diana, is making sure that people that have been doing this for a long time explain that and to what the value that is to the young generation.
So we're going to talk about, can you hear me? I can be loud. We're going to talk about development because it's important. We see a lot of new industry individuals. I don't want to say young people, but you're young in my perspective. But coming into our industry to have the correct developmental skills, simple skills that maybe when you're visiting with an advisor, they may not explain these kind of developmental skills that are very important within our industry. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And John, what can students do to be ready for that soft skills per se demand?
Yeah, through almost 20 years of teaching and 30 years in this business, I've put together a recipe of what the perfect graduate or the perfect entry-level person looks like. So if any of y'all, and I know there's some students here, if you meet this whole list, anybody on this floor would hire you. So that list is 9 items. Be culturally aware of other cultures. And these are things you have to work on and have in your resume and have available when you're interviewing. Be culturally aware. Know about geopolitics, the news, how it affects our business. So you need to read about the industry. There's plenty of sites to do that. You need to know the latest technology. Don't worry about putting Microsoft on your resume. We expect you to be the experts in that anyway. But if you know SAP, Oracle, and other things, put that on there. But you need to know Excel and the Office products too. You need leadership experience. We expect you to have at least some amount of leadership expertise or experience. We also expect you to be a good team player because you can't be a leader necessarily right away. We need you to have speaking experience. You need to be able to talk in front of people. Your interviews will probably be the first time you have to do that in a serious manner. We want you to have volunteering experience because if you've been volunteering, then that's a window into your brain and how you work, and you're probably going to be a good employee that helps out in the company as well and volunteering to do other things. You also need to have a good working knowledge when you come into the industry, at least at an entry level of Incoterms, standard documentation in the business, and the international flow of business and how that works. Language skills, if you have any of those language skills, great, but don't put it on your resume unless you're prepared to be tested by somebody in the office that actually speaks that language. And lastly, get some internship or work experience. So if you've got those 9 things, you're golden and you're set.
I'm going to interject a little bit of my experiences. I think the key word is communication. Everything that he listed off, it referenced communication, either globally, personally, understanding, and accepting, right? So if you can really focus on that, you'll be a key candidate.
And if you didn't write that list down and you need it, you can get it from me.
Mario, as a student and a recent intern, how did you become interested in developing your professional skills?
It really just started. Can you hear me on the mic? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would say it really just started by going to SAMA events, which is the Student Association of Maritime Administrators. On campus, it's our organization where we, volunteer and go out into the industry and bring speakers back. And so essentially, the common denominator with all the different speakers was them saying, you need to work on your soft skills, especially in this industry that's very people-oriented. And so that's really what got me starting to look into soft skills. I started going to ITMA lunches, Transportation Club of Houston lunches, and that really helped me, I think, start to look into how to develop these skills a lot more.
Kylie, what do you recommend based on your current experiences what a student should do to become a viable candidate to the workforce?
I think the most important thing a student can do is really gain as much experience as possible as early on. So through internships, people can do that. Internships really provide insight into a certain industry that's not as readily available in a traditional classroom. So students are able to apply what they learn in class materials into real-life scenarios. And holding that internship experience can make them a really great candidate for future companies.
Rick, do you have any comments about developmental skills that you would like to add?
No, I echo what John said. I mean, I applaud how he put his list together, that those soft skills that Mario talked about and what John talked about, if you looked at John's first 9, the cultural awareness, right? That's what I was talking about when I said you get the opportunity to travel, you get the opportunity to volunteer, you get those things on your resume. To John's point, they're fantastic. When I interview a lot, not me personally for a job, but only when they fire me. But I interview people quite often, and the ones that stick out, especially the younger ones, it's not always just the experience. It's what John just mentioned: the ability to speak, the soft skills. Can they communicate in other languages? Have they traveled a little bit? Do they volunteer? Even your church things, when you volunteer and go to different and help people. To John's point about they would probably volunteer within the organization, right? So I think those things that he mentioned are fantastic.
I would like to also address not just the newcomers into our industry, because we do have some people that are in college and want to become our industry, but we also have change in careers because things change in our life. So we all choose different, may do a career change in our older years, or maybe a second career. So the points that we're bringing up too are not just for newcomers as a student, but also if you're doing a career change. Sometimes you work in an environment where these communication things are not readily required. So it would be, if you're doing a career change, it would be also very important for our industry. Now we're going to move on to the next subject, which is internship. And working as making yourself available for an internship is key. If you're not in our industry and you want to become into our industry, maybe you wouldn't call it an internship, but you would call it an entry-level position. Be open, to experiencing an entry-level position if you're changing industries of what your career is going to be. So based on the internship, Rick, does your company participate in internship programs, and how do you recruit to that program?
Yes, we do. I mean, I think that's how we got Kylie. A couple things there. We have one of our business development directors who's very passionate about internships. Actually, she worked for me 20 years ago in an internship, and she happens to be at Agility and has always followed back up as a passion. So we recruit at about 5 colleges and through the ECMC. And every year, we start the year of January, February, saying, okay, what are the 3 to 4 or 5 projects that we think we can get interns, not only help our organization, but would help themselves, right? Recruit into that and say, so we go to every department and we look at what is it you want to accomplish, or what are some of the things that we can get better at, and can we get the interns? And it does twofold. It helps our organization and it helps the students, right? And then we hopefully get the students involved in things they would not have. Even if in logistics, when we talk about, it's not only the supply chain people we look at, right? It's IT, it's the technical. So it's not just one area of discipline, but we talk to it several areas, and we use that every year as our base, and we go from either 2 to 4 interns during the course of the year.
And we have a number of industry here represented today. So we know how the change in the market has been lately, and internships incur costs for our companies. So some of the companies they hold back on providing internships. So I'd like to ask John, how else can the industry participate in building the internship knowledge without the internship cost?
Yeah, there's a few things we can do as industry if we don't have the means financially, let's say, to bring on paid interns. I mean, it's not great, but of course there are unpaid internships, and there are students that will take unpaid internships in the absence of a paid internship if it's a great program where they're going to learn something. But you can also bring students in for a few days to just do shadowing in different departments with different employees. It doesn't have to be a long-term thing. It can be a one-day thing, a half day, and most of our area schools are open to that, so are the students. You can go speak to the schools. So speaking to the schools certainly will pass on knowledge and experience and information to the students that they may get through an internship. And with that, it's the area universities, colleges, and also high schools. And I know we're here in Houston, but there are certainly programs in other areas around the country. And of course, we have international visitors here at this conference. There are opportunities the same way in other countries as well. So you need to look for those. And then lastly, we need people to step up from industry to serve on the advisory boards of the colleges and universities here throughout the US and globally in order to drive the curriculum that is going to teach the students that are coming for these internships or coming for part-time jobs or eventually full-time jobs. And here in Houston, we have advisory councils at all the area colleges and universities. And I'm going to talk a little bit more later, but through the Port of Houston, there's also the opportunity to assist at the high school level. So we're even starting earlier in some of the career and technical programs at area high schools. So there, if the excuse shouldn't just be that we can't afford an intern, there are plenty of other options besides paying for an intern to come to your office to pass on the knowledge and work on this talent gap.
So Mario and Kylie, I'd like for you to share with us, what did you most take away from your internship this summer?
I can start on that. For me personally, it was getting a feel for an office environment. I had never really been into an office. Both of my parents are actually police officers too. They're not corporate America, as you could say. It's a very different environment. It's nothing like school, I found out on day one. But that and also learning about different cultures. The place I interned at was a company called AET. They're an oil tanker company, and so I sat next to a guy from Russia, across from a Nigerian, and sat right next to a girl that graduated from A&M Galveston. So you really just get to know a lot of different cultures, and that's really what I took away most from my internship was cultures, getting involved in a new environment, and also just trying to navigate the workplace. It's very different what I've seen.
Kylie?
For me, it would be seeing how classroom materials is being applied in the real life. It was really eye-opening to see how things that we learned in school actually affect day-to-day operations and hold actual accountability. Because in school, we learned certain definitions and the theory of supply chain. But being at Agility, we were able to actually experience how that comes into play and how that works.
Great. How do you feel, a very important part of everybody's career is your network, right? So as part of the internship program, how do you feel that how was your network built upon? How did you build upon your network?
For me, I think the internship definitely expanded my network so much. I met so many great individuals just from the agents I worked with on a day-to-day basis to some of the vice presidents. And we also had the opportunity to sit down with the CEO. And we had a chat just about the future of the industry and our career goals as interns. And everyone I met has positively impacted me so much. And to this day, I still keep in contact with many of them.
Mario?
For me, I really got to become familiar with my coworkers. I really took a lot from them. They were very welcoming and opening. They made it clear that I could always contact them. I always had a friend that I could talk to, and they would basically give me advice. I would go up to them and say, hey, after the internship, what do you think about this company? Or I know you've worked in the trading industry with trading houses. What do you think about their operations side? And I've got some key experiences and feedback from them. And that's really how I'm building my network, is just staying in contact with these people and just really, I guess, keeping up with them after the internship.
Another very important part of the industry's responsibility is providing mentorship. So internships are giving people applicable experiences to learn from, but mentorship is being there and supporting the individuals within our industry and the incoming individuals. So we have a few questions. John, what makes a successful mentor or mentee relationship? Since you have so many, we know that you have the recipe for success.
I do, and I have another recipe for what makes a great mentor-mentee relationship. I guess being a professor, I like to have these lists of things that are easy to follow and to learn. So the mentor-mentee relationship has to be two-way. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I've had different types of relationships. Some have been good, some have been bad. And so I've seen sort of the way that the mentees do an awesome job, the way they do a mediocre job, and the way they do just an awful job with being a mentee. And so when we think about it as a two-way street, it's a logical way to sort of lay out that relationship. And from a mentor standpoint, it's a serious thing. You're basically like a parent to this young person. When we talk about mentoring young people that are just coming into the business, and they're very impressionable, and you really need to think about how you are making an impression on them. So you need to be committed to the relationship. You can't be a flash in the pan, and you need to invest in their success. From the mentee side, this investment from the mentor, there's a lot of value to that. And most mentors are farther along in their career than you. Their time is valuable. They're very busy. And so the mentee needs to be sure to respect the mentor's time, so that when you're setting up meetings, be prepared when you go to your meetings with your mentor, things you want to talk about. That it's just not some sort of a shoot the bull session. Basically, that you go into each meeting prepared to talk about a different topic. The other thing is mentors need to give honest feedback. We shouldn't candy coat our feedback and our critiquing of our mentees. And I could talk all afternoon, but when we talk about men mentoring women, it's even worse. For some reason, men mentoring women think they need to candy coat their advice that they give women. And we're doing them a disservice by thinking we have to candy coat what we tell them and to go soft. So give honest feedback. From the mentee standpoint, you need to embrace that feedback and take that critiquing seriously. And don't get defensive about it. Welcome that feedback from your mentor. That's also good training for when you get on the job and you're getting employee reviews that when your boss is telling you what you're doing wrong, you can accept that critiquing as well. As a mentor, we need to coach, sponsor, and champion our mentees. And that's extremely important to bring them up in the business and through the organization. I'll go back to mentoring women again. We talk about the pay gap, this gender gap. It's important for men when they're mentoring women also to bring them up through the company. And I think that's going to be a good way to get rid of that pay gap with women in many businesses. So the coaching, sponsoring, and championing is very important. So from the mentee side, if someone is coaching and championing and sponsoring you and making introductions to you into the business and into their office and other colleagues and associates in the industry, you need to basically establish trust with your mentor so that they don't mind opening those doors for you, that they don't mind saying, look at the great job this person did. They don't mind saying, we need to promote this person, or going to their associates in the business and saying, you need to hire this person. So as a mentee, establish the trust so that they will continue to coach and sponsor and champion you. And finally, for mentors, find mentees. We've got plenty of mentee candidates here at the conference. Establish relationships and look for building relationships where you can mentor young people into the business. And from the mentee standpoint, it's a two-way street, so you also need to take that step to build relationships. And as you're meeting people here at the conference, to follow up, to give them some tidbit of information that when you get their card and you email them, they remember you. So when you email them, they know who you were that came by the booth to talk to them. And what I will say is, don't just say to someone, will you be my mentor? That's a little bit awkward, can be creepy. And so also from a mentor standpoint, hey, I want to be your mentor. Probably you can get away with that a little more, but from the mentee standpoint, build the relationship first. And if you build the relationship, it will become a mentor-mentee relationship if it's meant to be. So you shouldn't force it. You just need to work on that relationship. So I hope sort of that two-way street really lays out the responsibilities and role of the mentee as well as the mentor and what makes it that successful relationship.
Thank you. When we're talking about mentorships, it's not just an external, outside of a business workplace. You can also have internal mentorships. And a lot of the companies within our industry foster that type of thought or process. And Rick, I remember you had mentioned that Agility participates in an internal mentorship type program.
I'm sorry?
The Agility fosters an internal mentorship program?
Yes, so we call it a buddy program at the very beginning, right? So that when anybody that first enters our organization has a buddy. And we try to pair that buddy with skill sets, young, or that can kind of work. And and they'll have that buddy first. The first few days are just going around introducing everybody, but they'll keep that buddy for 6 months. And then hopefully that, to John's point, you can't force that mentor-mentee relationship, but it could happen. That's what we start with. And quite interesting, even at dinner last night we have one of our vice presidents from the Middle East down here, and they were looking at putting somebody in Abu Dhabi. Our company is a Middle East company, in Abu Dhabi for learning heavy lift and that skill set. And they had a big advertising going on in the Middle East, and we sat down and said, we probably should, that's a great opportunity for young people in our organization to help develop them, as opposed to hiring somebody with a lot of experience in the Middle East. So he came to us last night, and he said, do you have somebody in the US that could maybe fit that mold and would want to live in Abu Dhabi for a year or two and gain that type of experience. So I think our company is doing a very good job of trying to foster that, getting the next generation up to speed in our industry.
John, do you have any examples that you maybe within your corporation?
Yeah, we also have a mentorship program within Bertling, and we paired up senior executives with junior employees and had a structure in place where they would meet at least once a month and report back. And I think when you have a corporate mentorship program, it's important to have a lot of structure to it, that it's followed and followed up on, and that you look at how it went at the end to make improvements. The other thing I would add that some people don't think about with corporate mentorships, it's important to first say that it's not for the mentee to just ask that senior person how they get a raise in the company. It's to get advice and how they move through the company. The other thing that's important to have, we actually did a confidentiality agreement between the two parties so that the mentee would feel comfortable talking about sensitive topics with this manager from the same company and vice versa. So the corporate mentor programs, by necessity, need to have a little bit more structure and reporting to them than just say more of a casual relationship where a student here meets one of our professionals and develops a relationship to sort of get guided by them through the industry.
Good point.
Mario, do you have a mentor?
Yes, I have several mentors. John is definitely one of my biggest mentors. I met John through A&M Galveston, of course. Really, the first year, my freshman year, I didn't really talk to John too much. I knew he was the advisor for SAMA, but I just was like, okay, he's an advisor for SAMA, they're a faculty advisor. I'll go to the meetings. I'm a freshman. I think it's a little too early. But I started conversing with him, and we started basically sharing articles, and he was telling me, giving me information about the industry, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, I can get into this. And it started with just building a relationship, asking questions. He would send me articles, podcasts. We had some similar interests, like Stoic philosophy, things like that we would talk about. And that's really how our mentorship built. And then it officially became a mentor with the ITMA scholarship program, which basically, you apply for scholarships, and if you get a scholarship, they'll pair you up with a mentor. And they paired me up with John. And I also have a mentor through A&M Galveston, the career service office Ken Bailey runs. He set up a program basically where alumni from A&M Galveston would pair up with a student. And my other mentor is Nick Crow. He works at Cashman Barge. And we're developing our relationship as well. And so I think it really just starts with getting out there and just building a relationship. Like you said, not be my mentor, please, but more of a, here, I have a question, can you answer? And then it really becomes a symbiotic relationship. I mean, you can ask John. I send him articles, I send him podcasts, and we don't even agree on everything. We really don't, but yeah. So really just building that relationship first, and then sort of taking it a step further. And eventually, it becomes references or introductions, and that's about it.
Well, besides my mentors at Agility, I also have lots of mentors at school. A lot of my professors and even our university program director has helped students out a lot. And like Mario said, it's not about asking that question, but more of just popping by their office and asking any questions maybe you didn't want to ask in class. So by going to their office after hours and during their office hours, you can really develop that relationship. For me, I would say my program director, Margaret Kidge, has really influenced me, and she's one of the main reasons I actually was able to internship at Agility over the summer.
Okay, so we've talked about 3 of the main objectives. Now, the last objective is really what's important to our industry to continue growing interest, which is recruitment. Okay, now I can sing. No. So the most important to get more is recruiting individuals and adding to our staff and the industry talent. So on recruitment, John, do you think there's really a talent gap?
Yes, if you Google talent gap with oil industry, medical industry, accounting industry, pharmaceutical industry, and logistics industry, you'll find up-teen articles talking about the talent gap. And so I have another list of some stats that are extremely eye-opening, that if you think there's not a talent gap from these statistics, you will not be able to argue it. So 10,000 people are turning 65 every day in the USA. That started back in 2001, and that rate of retirees turning 65 every day goes until 2030. So when we get to 2030, well over a quarter of the population in the US is going to be way past 65. It's 10,000 every day. Currently, there's about 1.4 million logistics openings in the current job market. So that's not just maritime breakbulk, that's everything. That's supply chain, warehousing, procurement, truck drivers, everything, but 1.4 million. Right now, there's 6 jobs for every qualified person in that market when they do these studies. Soon to be 9 jobs for every qualified person. 32% of companies polled in a poll that the university did have not created a pipeline of talent. So when they were honest about it, they came up with a 32% figure that had not created a pipeline of talent. They probably haven't heard of those other statistics. And only 30% of executives polled in another study are extremely or very confident that their companies possess the talent on board to deal with today's logistics and maritime challenges. Only 38% feel they have the people on board. That is all a direct reflection or feeds into this idea of if we have a talent gap in our industry. We do. And what I'll also say is that we've talked about this. 10 years ago, we talked about it. And we said, what are we doing to get young people into the business? And what happened about 10 years ago? Nestor, what happened 10 years ago? Peter? 2008, 2009.
Economy crash.
Crash. So none of us are worried about finding people. So now as things start to come back, we're worried again. But are we going to do something this time? I think this time we actually realize there's a problem. And back then, I didn't know about these statistics. They've probably gotten worse. So that's a long answer to, is there a talent gap? Yes. I guess you know how I feel about that.
Thank you. So can you hear me? Hello? You can hear me? Okay. So that answers our question. It's actually kind of terrifying if you think about it as business owners and companies and looking to make our 5 and 10-year goal, plan for our companies. Rick, what does the employee landscape look like? What do you feel it looks like? And are you seeing more candidates filling open positions, or
I think it's we talk about this all the time. We can't get enough people. We can't get the right people. We can't find people. And I think it's incumbent, to John's point, on us as an organization to recruit and have that strategy set and not wait for an opening, right? So it's incumbent, or it's our responsibility rather, to then recognize what we have within the organization and stay in front of that. To John's point, with all the statistics, we're lucky. We live in the one of the best countries in the world. Today's economy has been fantastic. There's the jobs are available everywhere, right? So my job for our organization has always been in business development. And like in business development, if you don't have a large pipeline, you will not close deals. Same in recruitment. If you don't have a strategy and a large pipeline, you will have a talent gap, right? So you have to approach that in the same manner. And I think we're trying to do that. I've been fortunate and been with organizations that have good structure within that. But at the end of the day, it is our responsibility as an organization to shorten that talent gap, because to John's point, I think it even goes back 20 years, every 10 years, every 5 years. Oh, there's not enough people, there's not enough. You as an organization has to then have that funnel all times with people that you can recruit, or what does that strategy look like, and not wait till you have an opening.
Mario, what, with your recent experience of entering in our industry, what can we do to attract new talent to the industry? What did you observe during your recent internship that maybe we haven't seen, that maybe you could give us some advice on how to recruit to her?
I would really just say to be more active on social media. For me, to be honest, I use social media all the time. Everybody in our generation pretty much uses social media all the time. And whenever I see companies, like I know BBC has a very good social media presence. I follow their social media. MSC has a good social media presence. And I just like to see, images, knowing about events. And I feel like if companies could really hone in on the social media and even like offering, say like, hey, we're offering a tour at our facility, I'm sure half of the students in the audience would definitely go. We'd get our friends together and we'd all go. But these things aren't really a big thing right now. There's some companies that post maybe once in every while, but I just feel like if you could get that social media presence up, a lot of us would be more open and really think, man, this company's on top of their stuff. They're actually trying to appeal to us with, the technology that we use personally.
Great, that's great input. Kylie, do you have any input that maybe, what could we do that would?
Yeah, I think career fairs are a great option for companies. Actually going to the university itself and getting that in-person connection with students can greatly affect them. I know at my university, career fairs happen maybe 5 times a semester, and by seeing different companies, you can really foster that relationship, maybe that wasn't there before.
Okay, that's great. So it's pretty much marketing ourselves to the younger generation is what I'm hearing. Mario or Kylie, do you feel our industry is inviting? And what can we do better to, I know we're talking about marketing or whatever, but you've actually, how did you feel during your internship or when you've attended ITMA functions or functions of the industry? Did you feel invited by our industry peers?
I definitely feel like the industry is inviting, but there's a lot to work on. So for example, ITMA has a good amount of people, but not all the tables are filled, or like some luncheons have more people than other luncheons. And I just feel like if there could be more, dedication to building a relationship with the younger audience, that would really help with recruiting. And I feel great whenever I see somebody from ITMA and then I come to an organization like Breakbulk, a conference like this, and I recognize people like, hey, how's it going, Frank? Like, I recognize you. Or somebody from SAMA, hey, Sean, how you doing today? It's great. That's really, I think, just being at these things and being open to students. And I know I say it's welcoming because they have, free student admission to certain things. Some luncheons will have a cheaper cost for students, which is a big deal. For me personally, when I see that it's free and there's a lunch, I'm like, okay, that's awesome. That's my lunch for today. And that's really what I think can free and being open to the students is really great.
Kylie, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do think it's welcoming, but also on both sides, I guess there has to be that first step. Mm-hmm. Any industry can be welcoming, but we all have to put ourselves out there a little bit in order to foster such a relationship.
That's right. Make yourself vulnerable. John, do you see we're making some kind of progress in the talent gap?
Yes, I definitely see a groundswell of more people than ever being involved in this initiative to bring young people into the business. If I look at the participation in our advisory boards, in the Port Houston Partners in Maritime Education, which of course is specific to here, we're seeing more and more companies be represented. We're seeing, this year we saw an increase in the number of interns through the ECMC program. So even in, let's say, some stagnation in our business, this was a record summer for the number of interns through the ECMC program. So for sure, I've got a positive outlook that we are doing the right things to work on this challenge and to solve it and to take care of it, basically.
Great.
And I'll echo some of that John mentions. I'm seeing it from the company side, not so much from the lack of talent. Companies realize that we have to be proactive. We can't wait and hope people join the industry and look for experienced people. The companies that are proactive are the ones that are going to be ahead of everybody else, right? And that not only helps the younger generation and close that gap, but it helps your own company. I mean, if you're smart as an organization, then you get heavily involved in recruitment. You get heavily involved, as Kylie mentioned, career fairs at colleges. Get some of your leadership within your organizations to volunteer and go speak at these colleges to the supply chain group, right? The companies that do that are going to shrink that talent gap. So my whole initiative has always been, don't wait, do something about it, right? Don't just, and then all of a sudden that talent gap starts shrinking. And if it becomes a talent gap, I'm going to say that's somebody else's company. It's not going to be our company because we're going to do something about it, right?
I would also like to add too, sort of what Kylie was talking about, a two-way street and stepping up. Elizabeth, what year is this of the Education Day? Do you know? 10th year? So I would say that in the last 2 years, the students, the future employees in our business, are showing more enthusiasm than ever. I think the increase in involvement of the students and the schools is just exponentially increased just in the last 3 years. So why I'm bringing that up is that as companies are open and working on this talent gap issue, we've got plenty of very qualified, very enthusiastic students, more so than ever before. And we've seen that, I think, Elizabeth, with the Education Day, just the participation and the way that goes. So the students are also stepping up, to Kylie's point. It is a two-way street, and we're not going to some just empty cave looking for people. The people are there to fill the talent gap. And so I think that's important to bring up, that yes, we're making progress, but the students, the other side, are also making a lot of progress. And so the exceptional students today are much more exceptional than the exceptional students were 5 years or 10 years ago. So that's a very positive sign for the future of our industry.
All right. So today we talked about 4 important things, and we would like for everybody to take, if everybody took at least one of those subjects and thought about them the next couple of days and how you can act on it within our industry, it would make a great impact. But does anybody have any questions for our panelists? Additional questions?
So I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate here.
Oh, yeah.
Safety.
Safety hazard. Thank you. Good recovery.
Yes.
All right, so my name's Nathan. I'll play a little bit of a devil's advocate here. Some individuals might dissuade younger people from going overseas and maybe trying some of these cultural differences like John and Mr. Padilla had mentioned before. Would you argue that this is something that students should be looking for right out of college, or is this something that maybe get our feet on the ground a little bit and then potentially look for overseas experience?
I think what you need to look at when you start your career, most of us will change our careers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in your lifetime, right? But I would say if you start with the end in mind, that at some point I'm going to try to do this. At some point, I'll never forget having my oldest daughter's 32 years old. And she went to Texas State, and when she was a junior, we were talking about her career, and she was playing soccer at Texas State, and I said, and she was studying environmental science. I said, honey, why don't you go to China and understand the China, even if you're a teacher in China, understand the culture. You're going to be an environmental scientist. There's going to be a lot of opportunities within the US and in China. And if you just understand their culture, I'll never forget the look I had. I thought I was a one-eyed monster. She said, "You want me to go to China, Dad? Really?" I said, "It's not right now. You might not have to, but at some point, look at that, right?" So if you want to stay in a company and be at an entry level, that's good. But be the first one to raise your hand. Even in our industry, we call it hand carry, right? So we have an emergency shipment that might need to go to Incheon, Korea, and we need to fly somebody there for the weekend, deliver a package, come back. Be the first one to raise your hand to go do that, right? Say, I'll take that. Go see that culture and come right back.
I think a good answer to that is it depends on you. You always ask people for advice, but always listen to yourself. Sometimes people give you good advice, but sometimes you have to listen to yourself, because if you take the ownership in your own decision, you'll make it work. But if you have somebody leading you, you may kind of say, well, they told me to go, you know. So base it on how you feel comfortable with the opportunity. Because I don't think it's ever too young to travel. I traveled when I was 17 by myself internationally, and but times were different, you know. That's what a mother would say. But it's all about yourself. So if you get an opportunity to travel internationally and it's a safe environment, I would say take it up, no matter where you are. Any other questions?
Thank you. Chris Döpken, I'm an international journalist from Switzerland. A question, maybe an international benchmark, a question which is often raised in the talent gap that we are facing everywhere in our industry on a worldwide scale. A major problem is the fact that our industry tends to pay less wage than other industries do, and that's a major subject in Europe, in saying how can we raise more interest in getting better salaries and qualify not only our people but also our industry in order to have higher margins and be able to afford higher salaries. Maybe very blunt, but I think that's a major subject we have to face also. When in Europe, that's a major problem.
Take a shot at that?
I'm going to say one thing. I'm not sure about the pay per se in Europe, because I don't want to comment on something I'm not aware of. But I can tell you that I can tell you a personal experience. I have no college degree, and I feel that our industry is very well paid within the U.S. If you have a college degree in supply chain, to my benefit, back in those days there was no supply chain degree back then. But I think that within the U.S., actually our industry, within the projects, Breakbulk, you have a really good opportunity of economical situations if you put what you need to into it.
Yeah, I would say that the challenge for us is that we're competing more than ever as an industry, as a niche part of the logistics industry, to attract talent from other areas of the logistics industry. And I think that goes to a little bit what you're talking about. So, of course, the big sexy stuff is all the last mile Amazon deliveries and, medical supply chain jobs. Those are also good jobs. And so we're competing certainly more today than we were 10 years ago with some of these more progressive type industries. And so being in a slowdown of some sorts, let's say, we do need to make sure that we are paying properly to attract talent away from high tech, working for Tesla, working for SpaceX, working for Amazon, working in those industries. We need to attract people to work in sort of the breakbulk, cargo moving, heavy lifts industry. And how we make that attractive, part of it is we all know it's a great industry to work in. That's why we're in it. But for students and young people, it's got to be also where it pays them a wage that competes with other industries. And so there certainly is that challenge, and I think we're aware in some cases that we are fighting against other industries. And so as companies, you've got to be cognizant of what is the competition as far as wages for young people coming out of universities or apprenticeship programs.
And not only that, I would also add that over the years, our margins have really shrunk. And that's become a challenge, right? Because then all of a sudden your wages go up, your margins go down, and all the bosses aren't happy, right? All the shareholders are not happy. But to John's point is that we're competing against other industries, and what I've seen, especially in our organization the last 3 years, we have had to pay more than we've ever had to pay to keep talent and recruit talent into the organization. So I think from a breakbulk specialty niche logistics, we pay higher than the normal the normal freight forwarding.
For sure.
But that was a very good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Anybody have another question they would like to ask? Yes, sir.
Timothy Farmer. I'm a Mara student at Texas A&M, and I wanted to know, you guys were talking about the soft skills, and that's definitely something that I think we could all work on. But what are some of the technical skills that you think are maybe lacking that you're not seeing coming straight out of university?
The big one word, Excel.
Yes.
Excel. Excel had died out for a while, and now that we're crunching data again in the last couple of years, and that's not going away, SAP and Oracle don't really necessarily crunch the data in the way you have to crunch it. I've seen my wife crunching data that's been spit out of SAP, and she's crunching data in Excel. And so the universities haven't necessarily done a good enough job, in some cases, of making sure we have good, rigorous classes that are teaching the sort of accelerated needs that we have on just Excel alone. It's very important to be the expert in Excel and not just making a list of things, but actually using Excel to crunch data. We're expecting you to come out of college to be able to do that, especially if you are going to work, let's say, on the shipper side, or for a chemical company, or for an oil company. Maybe not so much working for a freight forwarder or a ship owner, but if you're on the side that owns the cargo in the business, we expect you to work on Excel. And you may have to do that looking at YouTube videos and paying for some of your own training, or push your schools to put some classes in place for Excel.
I'll tell you a quick story to John's point. My boss's son, his first job is, he's been on this job 6 months now. This is his first job. He has an MBA from Baylor, mechanical engineer, and he's working at an EPC firm. And he came and he calls his dad. He says, "Dad, they think I'm a genius. I know Excel back and forth. I can do spreadsheets like crazy." He said, "And they think I'm the smartest guy in the room." And he said, "Nothing to do with my mechanical engineer, the MBA from Baylor, right? It's Excel, because he can run all kind of data, spin data, have the data available to executives, and they think he's the best thing since sliced bread."
I would say also PowerPoint presentations. I think people sometimes are using Prezi or the new stuff, but being able to put what your thoughts are on paper and deliver it to other people, very important. Do we have any other? Yes.
Howdy, my name's Eric Lindley. I'm also a senior Mara student at Texas A&M Galveston. In your professional opinion, how worried should we be about the next recession that's coming in? And people like Forbes and Wall Street Journal have said it's going to be anywhere between 12 to 18 months from now, perhaps maybe even a little bit longer. But how worried should we be as new starts to our careers, and if we're entering the job market at that time?
Don't worry about it. That's what I would say. Don't worry about it and be ready to start wherever you can. The economy in our career has been up and down, up and down. So as long as you're versatile and willing to do whatever it takes, I think you don't have to worry about it. That's my personal opinion. What do you think, John?
I would say follow my recipe for the perfect graduate, and you won't have to worry about a slowdown in the business. Somebody's going to hire you.
Remember that transportation and logistics, whether it's big projects or small projects or any kind of logistics, we have that every day. So no matter what you do in your life, there's always logistics. So if you are selling that finite piece of diamond and you're worried about recession, you probably should. But logistics, we have that every day. So I think you've got a good career.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to add to the question that he asked earlier about technical skills. I think within the industry, we do a lot of conversion, between, of course, the metric systems and then, of course, the English systems and all of that. So just knowing how to convert between pounds and kilograms and all of that, I think that's very, very important because I think almost every day we do that within our industry.
That's it.
Okay. Okay, I guess time's out. I'm getting the cut. What is this? But thank you everybody for showing up and showing interest in growing our talent. And for those of you coming or thinking about coming into our industry, welcome. And please feel to reach out to any of us on the panel. We're definitely open and give you lots of advice.
Thank you.